Great. So hello, and you're all very welcome. My name is Catherine O'Connor. I'm the Student and New Graduate Officer with the INMO. I'd like to thank you all for joining the webinar today about period poverty. Just as a little bit of housekeeping before we start, this webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded onto the INMO Professionals website, but don't worry, as attendees your cameras are off so we can't see you, so you can just sit back and relax and enjoy the programme that we have prepared. If you have any questions at all during the webinar, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and as you know we have some raffle prizes to give away, so the winners will be announced at the end of the webinar. So I'll now hand you over to our INMO President Karen McGowan to open the webinar.
We are delighted to welcome you to this webinar this afternoon on World Menstrual Hygiene Day. It is an absolute honour to be speaking with you all, and it is an honour for the Irish Nurses and Midwives organisation to be launching its position statement on period poverty. Today would not be taking place only for the dedication of the students, new graduates and INMO professionals. I would specifically like to thank NICS, who are sponsoring the raffle we are having at the end of the webinar. Being part of a predominantly female profession, I'm very proud to be raising the flag for the movement on period pride and to call for more action, investment in menstrual health and hygiene. It is estimated that between 53,000 and 85,000 women, girls and trans people in Ireland are at risk of period poverty. There is a massive stigma surrounding periods and the cost of period products. That has very real consequences in the lives of people in our society every day. Opening up the conversation and breaking the silence is what is needed. The INMO specifically want to change attitudes towards periods through education and to normalise discussions and decrease stigma. By raising awareness and changing social norms, we can achieve real change for people and the change that improves their everyday lives. We need to stop being afraid to talk about periods. The call for action means we need access to free menstrual supplies with appropriate disposal facilities and to ensure menstrual products are not subject to VAT and that we can extend that to include all sanitary products. Everybody is different and it's not a one-size-for-all approach. The aim of this initiative is to create a world where no woman, girl or trans people are held back because of menstruation by 2030. As President of the Irish Nurses and Midwives organisation, I want to lend my full support to the call for action. It is not just a matter of equality, it is a matter of humanity. The stigma should be dissolved, the reticence abandoned, and we must ensure that no girl, woman or trans person has to endure the inhumanity of period poverty in our modern society. I congratulate you all for being part of the necessary discussion and the necessary change, and I commit to you our full support. Today, we are pleased to be in a position to share with you a wonderful lineup of speakers. We have Dr. Caroline West, the Period Positivity Movement, Claire Hunt from Homeless Period Ireland, Ellie Loftus from NICS, a nurse entrepreneur, Senator Annie Hoey, and INMO Executive Council Student Representative, Miss Melissa Plunkett. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy today's webinar. I will hand back over to the Chair, Catherine O'Connor.
Thank you very much indeed, President. So I'm delighted now to introduce you to our first speaker, Dr. Caroline West, who is a lecturer, media commentator, sex educator and sex columnist for the Irish Independent. She holds a PhD and MA in sexuality studies from DCU. Caroline has written and spoken about sustainable periods and period poverty and wants everyone to have a happy period. She hosts the podcast Glow West, which looks at sex, sexuality and the body through sexual wellness lens. She's passionate about creating spaces for calm, informed conversations about sex and the body, and is a pleasure advocate. Caroline can be contacted at iamcarolinewest.com or at carolinewest_IE on Twitter.
Perfect. Let me just share my screen there. Thanks, Mel, for the introduction. Thanks, Mel, for having me be a part of this today. This is fantastic to see. I'm really passionate about the busting of period myths, because when we have a lack of information, what springs up in its place is our myths instead, and that's just not good enough in 2020, that people are undergoing a period every month and don't fully know what's going on with their body. And that's where the period positivity movement comes in as well, that, you know, we should be empowered to have a happy period as much as we can. It doesn't mean that your period has to be all, you know, sprinkles and rainbows and stuff like that, but it doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world for you, of course. So let's dive into that. And I want to start off with just the period myths. Obviously, this is a very condensed talk into just 10 minutes, but some of the most common, really, because we have appalling sex education in this country, there are people that still haven't got the message yet that, you know, you can't, they might think, oh, you can't get pregnant on your period. And actually you can, even if it's rare, because we don't understand sometimes that all our cycles aren't regular. That should say 28 days, sorry. But if we were reading, you know, the very basics of our periods, we might think, oh, our cycle is exactly 28 days. And this is information I got in school, that like you absolutely cannot get pregnant on your period. And I was like, you can, your body can still have released an egg by then. And I shut down by the teacher. So I thought that was very unhelpful. So this is one of my personal bugbears. And this is also part of, you know, again, knowledge is really power, and it protects ourselves from unwanted pregnancies, or, you know, engaging in activity that we might not consent to if we had the full facts available to us as well. So that's really important. And because I work in the area of sex, of course, I have to talk about period sex. It is there for some people and it's not for others. But this is the idea that, you know, when we perpetuate the idea that periods are dirty and shameful and something, you know, you have to go sit in a cave for 5 days with, like, that's, none of that is helpful. And it really puts the idea of period sex as this, again, really extra dirty or extra taboo thing. And a lot of people actually find that actually helps to build intimacy with your partner. You know, some of the benefits are there on screen. You know, it can really help empower yourself and to feel like, actually, I feel really good right now having period sex. You know, the extra wetness comes in handy for some people. Some people like the extra, the warmer temperature. But I think it's really important to feel like, oh, you know, I can't have sex for the next 5 to 7 days, and because it's a dirty thing. But I think we need to really, really kind of bring back that period positivity into that. And that's not saying obviously everyone has to have period sex, but just not viewing it as the absolute worst thing in the world that some people would do. So in case you're wondering why I have wings on the screen, it's often known as earning your red wings when you have sex on your period. The other big myth that I really have a massive bugbear about is the idea that only women get periods. We live in 2021. We know there's a lot of different genders out there. Trans people can get periods. Some intersex people can have periods. Non-binary people can have periods. And not all women have periods. So instead of saying all those different groups and stuff, we can just say people who menstruate, because that's who we're talking to. You know, if we're talking about the Irish population who drive, we're going to say people who drive. We're not going to, you know, direct it to people on a bike and stuff like that. So we're talking about specific conversations. People who menstruate need help with buying period products. People who don't menstruate don't need help with buying period products. So we can be inclusive in this and not cause unnecessary trauma and exclusion to people. It's a very basic thing, but still a lot of the language out there is just women get periods, and that's just not the case, you know. So I think really being mindful of our language contributes to period positivity and just basic human decency and inclusivity. And there's a lot of bugbears in this. So one of my other bugbears is that we don't show period blood on screen sometimes. So people often don't know what their healthy period blood actually looks like, because it's certainly not blue. And we can see here on the screen here, all the different colors can actually mean different things. And some of them might mean you may need a trip to your GP to get something checked out. You know, if your blood is orange, you may have a possible infection and you could have cervical fluid in your blood. So that's really important to keep an eye on each month as you're, you know, experiencing your period. And this is where the positivity comes in as well, that if you are not viewing your period as something shameful and just to have to deal with each month and just, you know, get a pad and that's it. If you kind of embrace your body and think, okay, what's normal for me is 3 days of heavy bleeding, and then this is my normal blood color. Well, then it's easier for you to spot something if it goes wrong. And that way it's easier to kind of catch it in time. If there is something like perhaps cervical cancer down the line or some kind of infection, you don't need to suffer, you know, for a long time. You're a lot more engaged and empowered to look after your body. And this is just, it's a normal bodily function. You know, this is, if we scraped our elbow, we'd go to the doctor about that. So, you know, important that positivity into our genitals and into our periods is really, really important as well. And I also think this is really important to know that, you know, it's not normal to be absolutely knocked out for 5 to 7 days every single month. And a lot of maybe GPs or, you know, service providers or teachers would say, oh, it's normal, a period is really quite painful. And it's actually not for a lot of people. And it may be a sign that something else is going on, such as some of the issues on screen, endometriotis, there we go, can take a long time to get diagnosed. But this is, you know, part of that, knowing your body and monitoring what's going on and being able to go to your GP and say, look, I have these really heavy periods every month. They're 6 days long, or they're 10 days long, or whatever it is. And then advocating for the help that you need as well. And there are advocacy groups, thankfully, in Ireland as well, that will support you as well. But, you know, if you're absolutely knocked out and you can't move from your couch for, you know, a week every month, that's not okay. And that's a sign that, you know, maybe you may need to seek help. The adverse side is, oh, one of my myths, most of us are not playing tennis in tiny white shorts during our period, or skydiving or something like that. The reality for most of us is, periods are just, I'm going to eat 50 million burgers, I'm going to cry at everything, I'm going to have massive mood swings. So I would like more ads out there that would show the reality of periods as well. Just because that's just what it is, you know, and that's okay to have mood swings and stuff. That's just normal part of it. I want to just touch briefly then on the period positivity, and I know Claire would have something to say about companies, you know, and profits off periods and stuff. And obviously, all period products should be free to everybody. It's not a choice that we have. But I'm very thankful that we do live in a world now where we have quite a lot of period positivity going. And I think social media is really, really great for that. There's so many body positive and period positive accounts now on places like Instagram and TikTok, really kind of challenging the narrative that periods are dirty, and great graphics like these on screen, you know, and really kind of focusing on changing the language. So I have massive issues with the fact that this is called Menstrual Hygiene Day. Periods are not dirty, and the opposite of hygiene is dirty. You know, it's clean and dirty. It's that binary. So I really would prefer it to be called Menstrual Health Day, or just Menstruation Education Day, something like that. So if we're looking at things, I call them sanitary products, I would just prefer them to be called period products, because that's, again, it's more neutral. They're not feminine hygiene, because that's very exclusionary. It's just a product you use on your period. Like, the clue is in the name for that one. So I'd really like us to kind of reflect, maybe next year going forward, we might use different language that doesn't contribute maybe to the idea of that binary of hygiene and dirtiness. So I love that, you know, like, and very young people as well are putting out this message of period positivity, and you can look up some of the hashtags around this. And I just think it's really great to see that movement really kind of spreading wings, no pun intended, and going forth, because we don't have a lot of this information in our schools and maybe in our families. So it is nice to have a little world where people can access that information. And speaking of information, there's amazing podcasts out there that really look at period positivity and period power, and the idea of your period can be a time of empowerment and, or just normality. You don't have to be, you know, hiking or playing tennis in your white shorts, but it's just nice to know that there's people out there giving you that information, and you know, getting you to check in with your body and feeling like it's absolutely normal as well. There's a ton of books out there as well that really emphasize how the period movement has really, really changed. And again, education leads to empowerment. And a lot of these are very accessible. They might be only like €10 or something like that online. And I just think it's great that, you know, the menstrual movement, as the middle book says, is really, really good just for really empowering people. And so these can be resources if you're working with clients to be able to recommend them if they're expressing, you know, they'd like to have some more information. And that's essentially almost me done. This is a very 10-minute kind of talk, but if you would like to learn a little bit more about it, I do have a webinar coming up on the 16th of June. Kindly sponsored as well by Nick's World, who are here today. But if you donate products to Homeless Period Ireland, you have a chance to win some amazing eco-friendly products as well. So it's a free webinar, because just like, we need this information out there in the public for free. in very accessible ways. And I know webinar is still not the most accessible for people, but I think the more we do this, the more we change the experience of a period in Ireland for many, many people. It doesn't have to be period positivity, the same as sex positivity doesn't mean you have to have wild swinging orgies every night. It just means that it's, you know, you're viewing it as accepting and not that it's dirty. You're looking at things with judgment and accepting your body for what it is. So that's me. I'm going to stop there. And if you want to reach out, happy days. You know, I have eco-friendly period products, from pads to tampons. If you want to try some of them, I have them from Naturicare. Just drop me a line. I'll send it out in an unmarked brown envelope. And you can try that there as well. So that is me. Whistle stop tour through it all. Apologies. Yeah, really grateful for the space to be on this panel today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. That was really interesting. If you have a minute, actually, we just have a couple of questions come in from the chat. Sure. There. So the first is, why has the current view of periods as dirty developed when it's such a normal and natural process?
Like a lot of that is a lot of religion. There's quite a number of religions around the world that would have said that you were unclean during your period, and the whole, you know, cultural aspect of you had to go sit in a cave for 5 days. But for some people, you know, you can't take part in Ramadan if you are on your period. Now that could have changed, so don't quote me directly on that. But different religions have different viewpoints on that. But it's also a general fear of genitalia and you know, lack of education around what the body does, and because it's blood, and some people have issues with that, and it can also be misogyny as well. You know, it's like periods are part of the reproductive cycle and process. You know, when it doesn't happen, you get your period. So people have a lot of fear around that, and fear can turn into misogyny and hatred and stupid comments sometimes, and bigotry and all this kind of thing. So I think it lack of education really a lot of the time, you know, really just leads into that. You know, I saw a great thing on Instagram. There's an amazing woman called Liver Values. She's down in Cork, and she was painting her face the other day with her period blood, and immediately I was like, that's gross, that's disgusting. And then I went, hang on a sec, let's just unpack that. And that's because society has told me for years that period blood is awful. And then she was talking about the health benefits of how good it is on your skin. And I'm like, I'm not going to try it, but go knock yourself out. That's great, you know. But it's just really kind of unpacking all those messages that we get from society, TV, culture, parents, lack of education, religion, all those kind of things. Really a long way to go, but there are resources out there to help.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So our next speaker then is Claire Hunt. She is a stay-at-home mum and founder and general manager of Homeless Period Ireland, a volunteer initiative which is founded to provide free period products to women and girls in need. Claire is passionate about changing the negative perceptions of menstruation and normalising the subject of women's health through education, and also that everyone has period dignity. In 2019, Claire was a driving force behind an all-female cross-party motion in Dáil Éireann that proposed the provision of free period products in all schools and universities, which was passed by the House. Claire recently partnered with Lidl Ireland to become the first major retailer in the world to offer free period products.
Thank you very much, Catherine, and thank you, Karen and Steve, for asking me along today. It's a pleasure to be here because I think nurses and midwives are absolute heroes. So yes, Homeless Period Ireland. So sadly, period poverty is a global issue affecting women and girls and other people who menstruate, who do not have access to safe, hygienic period products, spaces, or education to manage their periods with dignity. Period poverty is a grassroots term that was coined by Tina Leslie from Freedom for Girls, who was and is working firsthand with communities to address the social detriments that lead to adverse menstrual health. Tina also does phenomenal work educating schoolgirls in Kenya. The reality is that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the social determinants that underpin period poverty. Many people have lost their livelihoods as a result of this pandemic, and many more might follow. This influences household incomes directly or indirectly, impacting menstruators' ability to afford or prioritise period products or access the education they need to manage their periods appropriately. Homeless Period Ireland is a grassroots volunteer-run initiative which was founded in 2016. I run it by myself I have a team of volunteer drivers, and this is a completely kindness-based initiative. I run it with zero funding. It is not a charity, as I firmly believe that it should not exist, and that is always my goal, not to exist. I initially became a volunteer driver after watching the film I, Daniel Blake. There is a scene in that film where one of the characters, who is a single mom, is on welfare and she gets caught shoplifting. And when her bag was emptied out by a store detective, inside was a packet of pads. Much to my shame, this is absolutely something that I'd never thought about before. How do women who cannot afford period products manage? I have since found out that they use tissues, cut up fabric, which can cut the inside of your thighs, socks, free bleed and not by choice, or stay at home. If you're a young girl, you may miss out on school, or you may stop taking part in a sport that you love. Once I started volunteering and meeting with women affected by period poverty and met with amazing initiatives involved in helping women, I felt I had to do something. Often we can see something that's a particularly sad issue and it can be the easy option to turn your back on it, but I just couldn't. I was inspired by the women I spoke to, and not only the women affected directly, but also inspired by those who work in the area of homelessness, in abuse refuges, etc., and also the work done by our incredible social workers. I decided to change the name from Homeless Period Dublin to Homeless Period Ireland, as sadly every county in Ireland has poverty and every county in Ireland has a direct provision centre. I felt it was important to get the message out there that this is not just an issue in Dublin. Over the last few years, Homeless Period Ireland has placed the issue of period poverty firmly on the political agenda, and in 2019 I contributed to the motion that passed in the Dáil, and this work is ongoing. Direct provision centres are now mostly provided with products. You may have seen an article on this last week, as nearly all but some are still not, and I will ensure that this happens. It's simply not good enough. Some county councils have come on board, most recently Wicklow County Council. In 2019, Dublin City Council announced a budget of 100,000 to provide period products. This has yet to roll out completely. And I think we can all agree that COVID has highlighted our lack of public toilets, not to mention what is put in them. While we talk about the need for, we need to talk about the need for period products in educational settings. While we talk about the need for period products in educational settings, it seems to be forgotten that often the most vulnerable in society are reliant on public toilets. You may have seen that Homeless Period Ireland in the news recently. I partnered with Lidl some months ago. Disclaimer, I am not paid. Lidl Ireland became the first major retailer in the world to combat period poverty by offering free period products in stores nationwide in partnership with Homeless Period Ireland. This received global acclaim, and even the New York Times interviewed me for a piece on it. This really shone a light on the work done here in Ireland at a grassroots level to eradicate period poverty. This is an ongoing partnership with Lidl, and this week they completed the first of its donations of period products to the Simon Community's Midwest Hub in line with Menstrual Health Day taking place today. I have, Caroline, changed the name from Hygiene to Health because I think that's hugely important as well. As part of the groundbreaking initiative, Lidl also launched dedicated donations of period products through the Ladies Gaelic Football Association, the LGFA, with the hopes of stocking free period products in LGFA clubs across the country. To date, more than 80 clubs, the length and breadth of the country, have applied for period product support, giving thousands of women and girls in their network access to free essential period products. Period poverty, at its most simple, is just a facet of financial poverty. And this is where we need to ask why. If you are experiencing fuel poverty or food poverty, and you are a woman, you will inevitably experience period poverty. Sadly, when you add period to poverty, it becomes a more trendy issue and a bandwagon issue. As Dr. Jennifer Martin from the WHO and founder of Pandemic Periods, of which I am the Ireland representative, said, period poverty is not trendy, not a passion project, and not a tool to leverage your own profile or political manifesto. It is incredibly frustrating that every year around Women's Day, a lot of people talk about what they are doing around this issue, but that is followed by complete silence. We should not be celebrating the fact that in 2021, countries are beginning to provide products. This just needs to happen. Sadly, there is a shame associated with periods. I'm sure many of you have hidden a tampon up your sleeve or worried about leaking. Education is key to breaking down stigma and shame.
Boys and girls need to be taught about periods, and from a young age and throughout secondary school. Let's not make this a one-off chat, as there are many layers for different stages. Men and boys are a very important part of this conversation. If a girl has not got a mother, maybe she has brothers or a dad who will teach her and help her understand what is happening to her body. I don't like to see menstrual health information online that does not come from a reliable medical source. I think it is very irresponsible, and I would ask everyone who has concerns about any aspect of their menstrual health to go to a doctor. And as Caroline mentioned, there are some terrific resources online, but please ensure that they are reliable and well resourced. Ones that stand out to me are Endo Ireland and the Eve Appeal and the Fibroid Society. I was very ill myself at the start of the year, ironically with a gynecological issue, absolutely no escaping this issue. I don't speak about it as it's simply not my place to do so, and all our bodies and cycles are different, and what's right for me may not be right for somebody else, and this is why I really feel we need a centralised education platform. I'll briefly touch on the issue of sustainability. I am often asked why I don't just give them, as in the people who can't afford products, menstrual cups. It's the one thing I get trolled on the most. Menstrual cups are a brilliant alternative, but they are not for people who don't have access to boiling water or their own bathroom, who may have experienced sexual trauma, or for those of us who simply do not want to use one. What we use is our choice, and this again comes back to education, as we need to be taught what products are on the market and what may be suitable for us. I think it was the year before last, the Tampax ad was banned in Ireland, and this is going to lead me into a little bit about sustainability again. When the ad was banned, it really kind of struck to me that, no one was mentioning the plastic applicator in the middle of it, and that was the bit that I found most offensive, because sadly one pad is the equivalent of 4 plastic bags in the sea. So I would really like to see the government tackle sustainability and period poverty simultaneously. I have recently started a new campaign, Period Should Not Cost the Earth, a bit of a double message in there. And I have some exciting work around that coming over the next few months. And I hope the government follow the lead of the Welsh Government by committing to providing 50% of the budget for period projects on sustainable products. I firmly believe that the only way we can move forward with pace and purpose is when we support each other with our networks and our spare time, and most importantly, by encouraging each other. This is how Homeless Period Ireland has grown over the last few years, but sadly, it has also grown because of the demand and the need for period products. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Really interesting to hear about the work that you've been doing. I suppose slightly related to that, and some of that work is our next speaker, Ellie Loftus, who practiced as a nurse for 7 years, with 5 of them spent in intensive care and then as a clinical nurse manager too. Ellie then went on to practice as a barrister, working on the Dublin Western Circuit, specialising in medical negligence, child law and general practice. Ellie is the founder and CEO of Nick's World, an Irish-based company set up to design and manufacture reusable, sustainable, absorbent and leak-proof period and bladder leak underwear called Nick's. She's a mother of 2 girls aged 14 and 8 and was concerned about the lack of choice and the cost of sanitary products, and that none of them address the psychological impact of period leaks, especially in young teens. However, what also troubled her was the impact of disposable sanitary products on the environment, taking 500 to 800 years to decompose in landfills. Ellie is immensely proud of her nursing background and credits this to her entrepreneurial endeavours. She would love to empower other nurses to have the confidence to do the same, and she's also kindly offered the prizes which will be raffled later on today.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to be here to speak, coming back to my nurse's roots again, which I'm entirely so very proud of. So I'm just waiting for the PowerPoint presentation just to come up. Catherine is able to do it because I can't change it off the iPad, so apologies for that. So as Catherine said there, I am CEO of Nick's World, which designs and manufactures and produces a sustainable period and bladder leak underwear. So you can go to the next slide, Catherine, please. So what is Nick's trying to solve? So Nick's was formed to help teens, women's, trans, all of our people to deal with periods and the whole area of bladder leaks. So I'm very passionate about this. I'm a nurse. I'm a mother to 2 girls as well. So I have both a professional and a personal interest in making periods better for women going forward. The issue that I have really is that we haven't really moved forward in making periods easier for our people really around us. Nothing has really changed in the last 50 years. And as Claire just mentioned there, everything is disposable. So we have all the plastic issue. And I don't think we can have this conversation about periods. And I really welcome making period products free in public spaces. But we can't have this conversation in isolation without taking into consideration the impact on our environment. And as Claire alluded to, it takes 500 to 800 years for a sanitary pad to decompose. I mean, that is a pretty frightening statistic. And it's the same with the applicators and everything. And I'm not knocking period products in any way. This is everybody's choice, whatever they want to choose. But as I say, we can't have this conversation in isolation without considering the impact of disposable sanitary products on our environment. The next slide, Catherine, please. So I just wanted to kind of set the scene about what my motivation in relation to NICS, to setting up NICS World. So this is just some statistics from Plan International. So out of 1,100 12 to 19-year-old girls that were surveyed on period stigma, over 61% said that they felt embarrassed by their periods. Now, how did we get here? How is 61% of our girls in the year when the study was done, 2020, how are they embarrassed by their periods? I mean, what is our conversation like? Is it something that we're saying as, you know, as parents, as the public, as our community? Why is our girls feeling so embarrassed by something that's so natural? And it's a sign of health. 61% have missed school, so it's impacting on their education and their welfare. And 88% felt less able to pay attention during this time. Next slide, Catherine, please. So we went off then and we did our own focus groups because we want to kind of focus in on, you know, what is it that's bothering our girls or our people or our trans in relation to what are they telling us? Why are they so upset about their periods? Why is there such shame? Why is there such negativity? So one girl said, I got up off the seat at school and the seat was bloody. So were my clothes. I didn't know what to do. Another said, I got up out of bed to make it and there was blood stains on the sheet. Another one said, I was at my friend's house and got off the sofa and there was a blood stain under me. I tried to cover it up, but my friend's brother saw it. It was so embarrassing. We can all put ourselves in this position and think, I mean, how embarrassing this is for our teens. I feel like I'm wearing a nappy to school with all the pads that I need. Next slide, please, Catherine. It is so hard to get to a bathroom to change my pad or tampon, and I'm terrified I'm going to leak. My child wears a jumper around her waist all day in school in case she leaks. I would like to feel normal on my period. I don't want to play sport on my period. I'm too afraid of leaks coming through my clothes. I know it isn't a big deal, but I just don't want people knowing I have my period. To me, it is private. So this is what they were saying. So you can see the common denominator here. It was about the psychological impact of periods on our teens. So then what is NICS trying to do? So NICS is reusable period underwear. You can wash them and can use them over and over again. You throw them in the washing machine with your other clothes, so there's no like extra washes or anything like that. They're absorbent. There's different absorbencies from 4 to 8 tampons worth of blood without any other sanitary products. They're leak-proof, which is a big issue, as you can see from the psychological impact on teens especially, and especially young teens who get their periods. I mean, this is the worst thing that can happen to them at school in their mind. They look like normal underwear, and that is a big part of NICS, is trying to make underwear look normal. It doesn't have to be, you know, something different or anybody needs to know it. They're very, very discreet. They come in different styles, including period bikinis for swimming, because we know how much sport is being lost. And you know, I know that you don't always feel like sport, but we shouldn't be stopped because we have our periods. You should be able to go swimming, you should be able to go sunbathing, you should be able to play your sport if that's what you want to do. They're environmentally friendly and they give confidence in school and at work. The next slide, Catherine, please. So what do they look like? As I said, they just look like normal underwear. They don't look anything unusual. You can go to the next slide, Catherine. There's two of our teens there modeling our underwear, and you can see they look perfectly normal. You can hang out on your sleepover and not worry about when you have your periods. So they just look like regular underwear. And next slide. So I would love if anybody wants to make contact with me. I'm a nurse entrepreneur. I've used my knowledge base to develop NICS World, and I want to be a huge part of the contribution to solving this issue for our own fellow women, teens, trans. I want to be part of that conversation from an environmentally friendly perspective. And I'm here to help in any way that I can contribute to that conversation. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Ellie. And actually, we just have a question come up in the chat there. How long does the knits underwear last, and what are they made of?
So there's different fabrics used. We mainly make them in cotton or bamboo or sustainable fabrics. But how long do they last? Well, we send out instructions with every single one, a personal letter with everyone to how to look after your knits. So they should last you for years if you take good care of them.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker then, we have a slight change in speakers today, as unfortunately Senator Rebecca Moynihan was unable to join us, but we're pleased to have Labour Party Senator Annie Hoey join us in her absence to speak about a bill which was introduced at the beginning of the year to make period products free in Ireland. The Period Products Free Provisions Bill would make pads, tampons and tampons freely available in schools, education centres and other public buildings.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully you can hear me okay. With the microphones and stuff. So thanks so much for having me. My name is, as I said, Annie Hoey. I'm a senator with the Labour Party and my pronouns are she, her. And as I said earlier this year, my colleague, Senator Rebecca Moynihan, put forward the Free Provision of Period Products Bill 2020. So I'll go through that bill and some of what we've been doing in that area over the next few minutes. But firstly, can I say I've learned already myself so much today. I didn't know, for example, what different blood colours meant. And I was like looking really closely into the screen to try and take note of, my high estrogen levels and other things. So like, I'm learning myself all about this. And without necessarily wanting to go into a kumbaya circle about my own periods, let me just say that it has been a lifelong problem for me and has caused, no end of trouble. For context, I was only 10 years old when I was put on the pill in order to try and manage my periods, and things have kind of been going on a journey ever since then. And I'm really lucky that I now have a brilliant doctor in a fantastic practice that is so women's health focused. And it's really eye-opening when you have a doctor that believes you and says, actually, no, you don't have to suffer like this. This is not normal, and let's see what we can do. So I was quite lucky that at the very beginning I had that, and then it kind of disappeared in the middle and then at the end. So it's just, and that's, I think, Dr. West said, like, there are lots of things that actually aren't normal that we are told are normal. And that ties into this whole area of shame and other things. I won't expand too much on that. And secondly, I might reflect a little bit on language. So like when Senator Rebecca Moynihan was putting this bill together, she was really specifically talking about period justice, and the idea that this goes beyond period poverty, and it's a matter of justice, and that everyone should have a right to a safe period without shame or stigma or lack of access to products. And I absolutely agree also with the need for sustainable products, and that doesn't necessarily mean menstrual cups. I think when we talk about sustainable products, everyone immediately jumps to menstrual cups, and as has been outlined already, there are, people require other facilities in order to be able to use them. So I think, I think it's great that we're having a conversation about sustainable period products of different kinds. And I'm on the, just that I'm on the Women's Caucus here in Leinster House, and we have sustainable menstrual products as part of our work plan. It's a part of work that we're doing. So I think, like, over the past few years, period poverty or menstrual justice or period justice, I think people have really started talking about them as being like a human rights issue. Like NGOs, media outlets, health institutions, and to say that period poverty or menstrual poverty or period justice affects many people, trans people, non-binary persons, women and girls. And when we deny people their access to safe or hygienic sanitary products and the right to manage their periods with dignity, that's an enormous problem. And there's even, higher effects on, our Roma community, traveller community, those living in direct provision, migrants, people with disabilities, endometriosis. There's a whole plethora of people for whom period justice applies to. And I think, we talked a little bit about period poverty or period justice being exacerbated by stigma, shame and inequality, and we already referenced the ban of the Tampax ad. 6 out of 10 people express feeling shame and stigma around period poverty. So I don't know how we're ever going to move away from that if we're even banning ads. And Dr. West talked about advertising and how periods are portrayed, and like even with all of the slightly weird things actually that we have in advertising. I've never played tennis when on my period. Even we can't even get, we can't, like when we even have those ads being banned, like that's really, really problematic. And I think there's a lot of work to do. I know this idea around stigma and stereotypes that's discussed, and the idea that things are dirty. And I know we talked as well here today about a conversation about using the word hygiene in relation to menstrual products. And I have to agree, you know, I think menstrual health is a great term, and not one that I even had thought of up until today. And I suppose one could say that the issue only becomes unhygienic if people don't actually have access to products and are forced into unhygienic situations because they can't access the products that they need. And you know, has Claire outlined, you know, some of the different methods people use in order to be able to manage their products. And so I'm a big fan of menstrual health as a term. And I think when we're talking about period justice, I think a human rights framework is really important. So it looks beyond mere access and distribution of period products to also consider it being a related and right, you know, education rights, work, privacy, dignity. And I think the inclusion of a human rights perspective in all discussions around period justice, I think would hopefully enable members of the public to see, you know, menstrual hygiene management or menstrual health management as an issue that's actually of state responsibility and not something that should be addressed solely through charities and donations. And like, you know, Claire has done incredible work and talking about homeless period, but we should never have gotten to that. Like the state and you know, public bodies should be recognizing that this is a human rights issue. So I think, you know, being clean is not a right, it's not being clean as a right, it's not a luxury or a privilege. So as I said, I think period justice is tied to human rights. You know, like if you think about it, like 3,000 days, or people will spend roughly 3,000 days over the course of their lifetime having periods. That's a lot of days. Like that's going to have an impact on your work, your health, your education. That's about, I think, 8 years of continuous bleeding. Like that's a lot. So the fact that we haven't been talking about how these intersect is kind of mad, I suppose, if you think about it. And the right to privacy and dignity and the right to sanitation, like they're tied into the Sustainable Development Goals. They're a really big conversation. You know, it's a very in thing to talk about. So I just said I'd flag that. So, and in 2019, according to CSO figures, about 17.8% of people were living in enforced deprivation in Ireland. However, women were more likely to experience enforced deprivation. So I think in 2019, it's about 18.3% of women experienced enforced deprivation compared to 15.6% in 2018. And then in another survey, 50% of Irish girls experienced financial difficulty in accessing period products. Like that's a lot, that's a really big number. And 85,000 people in Ireland are at risk of period poverty. That's a figure from 2019. So those are really big figures. So as we obviously know, period poverty can have a detrimental effect on the health and well-being of women, girls, trans people, and, you know, all of the groups that I mentioned, disabled people, and it's obviously further exacerbated when people are experiencing period health related issues such as endometriosis. So, I mean, there's loads of things I could talk about here, but I suppose some of the things that specifically that we wanted to talk about in relation to our bill, like the objective of this legislation is that all who menstruate should be able to access period products at no cost and when they're required. And ease of access and choice is at the heart of the legislation that my colleague Senator Rebecca Moynihan has put forward on behalf of the Labour Party. So our bill, I don't know if people are familiar with the Scottish legislation, but our bill effectively takes the Scottish legislation and converts it into an Irish context. Our bill places an obligation on the minister to secure the general availability of period products free of charge. And those period products have to be available in schools, education facilities, and the premises of public service bodies. The bill also places an obligation on the public service bodies and schools to consult with all potential users of period products to determine what products they want supplied and what way those products should be provided throughout the building. So, you know, this idea, you know, nothing without about us without us, you know, what kind of products do they want? Where's the best place for them to be? You know, tying into the idea of sustainability, but not putting particular products on people and really listening to what it is that they want. And then finally, the bill also places an obligation on the minister to engage in an information campaign so that people know that the products are available for free, and how the arrangements in each education or institution or public service body will work. So it's a really comprehensive piece of legislation. I think it's very progressive legislation. I think it's quite far-reaching. It goes beyond just providing period products, but actually engaging with period product users, what kind of products they want, where they want them, information as to where to get them, all of those things. So I think the bill, as I've talked about period justice, it moves from the idea of just being able to access free products and into this kind of wider realm of period justice, who needs to be able to access them, that being clean is a right and it shouldn't be subject to those who can afford it, or who have the facilities to do so. So I think, I mean, I'm happy to take any questions or to talk any further on that. So as I said, we put the bill on the table, and we'll be working kind of cross-party to get whatever legislation over the line and ensure that it is progressive, inclusive, that involves, you know, information campaigns, and that it involves consulting with those who use products, and it's not just a one-liner, here you go, there you go, get your free products, and that's the end of it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Senator. I suppose one question that's come up in the chat related to that point, I suppose relates to how is the campaign to change government policy or legislation progressing, and do you think that we will see any physical changes, I suppose, in 2021?
Well, I think there's a huge amount of cross-party support for it. You know, there's different legislation on the table. The Women's Caucus are very focused on this. It has passed, you know, there were motions passed through both houses. So there seems to be, I think, a real big determination to get something done on it. The problem is, you know, getting legislation to stay on the table. It's super easy to get legislation in the, you know, in the first stages, and then it's the fight to get it through. So like, I'm on the health committee, for example, so it can be used, that avenue, we'll be looking at that as an avenue to discuss this. I'm on the Women's Caucus, and as I said, we have that as part of our agenda. I'm the chair of the all-party reproductive rights group, so it can come through that. So, you know, we're trying to be, within the Labour Party, really strategic about how we're getting this done. As we said, we're doing cross-party work on it, and we'll be putting in amendments to whatever legislation comes onto the table, really progressive amendments to ensure, as I said, that it's really far-reaching, and it's not just you know, just about free products. It's about, you know, period justice as an overall thing. But there seems to be really strong support on it, and Claire, you know, said like it's really frustrating every year when on, like, you know, International Women's Day, everyone's like, yeah, we really need to talk about you know, we need to talk about, you know, period justice and period products, and nothing happened. So, you know, we wrote the bill, we've written the legislation, we put it on the table, and it's up to now other parties to come in and support that and get this moved along, because we're kind of fed up of talking about it. And Rebecca Moynihan's been talking about this for years. You know, she was the one who brought it into Dublin City Council. She's now brought it to our national legislature. So it'd be great if actually we could, a little less talk and a little bit more people swooping in behind the bill and actually getting it passed, because as we said, we've done the legwork on it now.
Great, thank you very much. I suppose a lot of what's been spoken about today ties in with the work that the student and new graduate members have done over the past number of months in developing the position statement for the INMO. So Melissa Plunkett is our final speaker. She's an internship student midwife and is the student representative on the INMO's Executive Council.
Hello. So I suppose I'm not going to bore you and go through everything again, because we've had some fabulous speakers, and I'm so grateful for everybody who's been able to come and speak on this topic. Certainly, I think we started this in the INMO in 2019, and then of course COVID happened. So I'm really grateful that we were able to pick this back up now with the position statement and go forward and raise awareness on this topic. So, you know, as Karen mentioned, our president earlier, the Irish nursing and midwifery workforce are predominantly women. So this is something that affects us more. Not saying that, you know, obviously we have non-binary, trans, intersex people, obviously, who have periods as well. But it is definitely something that can affect nurses and midwives while they're working their long shifts. And you'll have to forgive me, my lockdown hair is a bit of a nuisance at the moment. but it is something when we're working our long shifts that causes a problem, specifically for students who perhaps don't have the means to, you know, afford period products. So it's something that the student group, new grads and some staff decided to come together to create this position statement. And we're so grateful that we were supported by the INMO to do that. So when it comes to the position statement, we do have a call to action, you know, because it's not good enough that, you know, we have the likes of Claire who's doing such fabulous work with Homeless Period Ireland. But, you know, as she said, she shouldn't have a job. Sorry, Claire. I know you said that before, but, you know, you're right. This shouldn't fall to you to do. And it's just simply not good enough in 2021 that we're in this situation where we're relying on public donations. And this should be something that is provided for by our government for people in need and for those who have fallen on hard times. And COVID has certainly exacerbated that issue. So the calls to action would be to provide access to free menstrual supplies with appropriate disposal facilities in all public toilets, so regardless of gender, because, you know, it's not just women, and we shouldn't be policing that and saying that, you know, it is just women. It's something that we believe should be in all public toilets, in clinical areas, public and government buildings, schools, higher education institutions. You know, we should continue to ensure that tampons and sanitary towels or period products are not subject to VAT in Ireland, and to extend the zero rate treatment to include all period products. We want to work towards changing attitudes towards periods through education and advertising campaigns to normalise discussion and decrease stigma. So, you know, obviously we all have heard about the Tampax ad and it's been mentioned today. I think I was definitely shocked personally, and I know a lot of my friend group, we were shocked that, you know, something like this could actually be banned in this day and age. It's shocking to think that we're still facing the stigma and we're still facing the issues. So the INMO definitely want to continue to campaign and to lobby to continue to keep this important issue at the forefront. You know, it's not good enough to have promises and no actions. We definitely want to see this acted upon. You know, to think, Ellie, you know, you were quoting the survey there that 61% of 12 to 19-year-olds have missed school because of periods. You know, that's a shocking number. And we do welcome the bill that has been put forward, but was it Elvis Presley that said, a little less conversation, a little more action, please? It is something that we need to ensure is not just discussed and talked about. You know, we have done enough of that at this stage. We really want to see words being put into action. So certainly from the INMO point of view, we'll continue to campaign and hold events like this and raise awareness and continue to lobby decision makers to ensure that, you know, the promises are delivered upon, really. And I think that's what our hope was with this position statement. You know, students are affected by this. I know certainly myself, I have been caught short on a 12-hour shift where either I've forgotten, you know, to bring a product with me, or I have maybe 15 minutes and I'm deciding whether I want to have something to eat or whether I want to do the 10-minute round trip to my locker to get something. So it is something that, you know, is still an issue. And we really need to have some action on it. So again, I'd like to thank everybody who came and spoke on this topic. It's great to see so many different facets of the topic be discussed today, not just from education and stigma, but the politics of it and all the work that's been done. And then obviously the sustainability as well. It's really wonderful.
Great, thank you very much, Melissa, and well done again to all the student and new graduate members who've put in a tremendous amount of work over the last number of months in terms of getting that position statement up and running. So if you want to view it, it is available on the INMO website on the student and new graduate webpage. And obviously the INMO is going to continue to support the campaign and to raise the issue with the government, politicians within the HSE and the wider health service. Before we finish up, and I'm conscious we're coming close to time, there are some questions in the chat. This one is a general question, which I think I'll pose to all panelists, whoever may feel that they might want to comment on it. What can we do as nurses and midwives to change attitudes? If anyone would like to jump in.
I think the language is really important. So we're not using things like sanitary or hygiene. It's just a period product, because that is also very inclusive as well. We're not using feminine hygiene as well. It's just period product. It includes absolutely everybody. And then just educating yourself. There's like I shared the resources. There's a world of really great stuff out there. And I think, confronting our own biases and beliefs, like I said, the thought of someone putting period blood in their face, I was immediately like, oh, gross. But that is like, really, really empowering to someone else. And that's, we get all those messages all day, every day about how dirty periods are. So I think, just working on our own biases, I think can be really important as well. And you don't have to have all the answers. You can just point people in the direction. So maybe get a little resource list there. If anyone comes to your questions and go, oh, here's some books, here's some podcasts, here's some whatever, leaflets, all that kind of thing. Like it's all there, there's no excuse now to not have that ready and waiting to go.
And I think also worth mentioning is just what's really, really hugely important to me, and what's always my driving message is, you can talk about legislation till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, this is about providing dignity. And that's really what we absolutely cannot forget. This is a dignity issue, nothing more, nothing less. I think we can go around in swings and roundabouts talking about, what needs to be done at a government level, but really, this is about providing dignity for people.
Thank you very much, Claire. Ellie, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I just was springing to mind as well, just from having been a nurse as well. It's also a bit about looking after yourself in this, and long shifts on your feet, periods, and all the added issues that there are. And there was just one other thing. It's like, we haven't kind of spoken, I suppose, touched on the extra challenges of, like, I'm dealing with teens with autism and teens with Down syndrome, and that's the added issues in relation to periods, and how much more it exacerbates some of the sensory issues with maybe pads or whatever, or the fear of blood. So it's a whole other conversation in relation to our other teens or other women, people, trans, whatever, that have other issues that we kind of have to kind of consider in this whole period discussions as well.
Can I just come in on that as well? Just from working in a refuge for a long time, we used to have a lot of people come in from different cultural backgrounds, and if they needed period products, they wouldn't use tampons because, cultural issues around that. So just maybe being aware, if you're offering products to somebody, that there are other things out there, or like gender dysmorphia, or just some people, like Ellie was saying, autism, some people can't handle the little the poppers on, like, reusable sanitary pads, but you can get ones that fold. And then obviously Ellie's products are amazing. So, just being aware, like, that disabled people get periods too, and people from different cultures get periods. So just to be as inclusive as we possibly can.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, I think I've spoken to you about that before, Caroline. Like, I'm mostly asked for pads. That's the most requested item for me, and that can be for all manner of reasons. I think just from a managing point of view, also, a lot of people sadly who have experienced sexual trauma or FGM in this country who don't like to use tampons. So again, yeah, it's just been, again, isn't it? It just comes down to, for me, it just comes down to dignity and kindness, and just all of us being a little bit thoughtful. But yeah, for mostly for Homeless Period Ireland, for the women that I donate to, because it is mostly women, I'm not being discriminatory with my language. I'm always asked for pads.
And I think, just from the student nurse and midwife point of view, if you're dealing with the public, be mindful that just your lived experience isn't everyone's lived experience. So it is important to educate yourself and develop that great resource list. and just really be open to the possibility that people are in other circumstances, and to be mindful of the kind of things that you're offering or the suggestions that you have for them. Especially, you know, I know myself in midwifery, when we're talking about pads for, you know, the postpartum period, and you know, depending on the person you're dealing with, they may not have access to that. So just to be thoughtful about it.
Just on the back of that, Melissa, sorry, that's something I'm always raising as well, because maternity pads are really forgotten about in this conversation, you know, and we've women who are accessing, you know, abortion care, you know, for after post-abortion, you know, post-miscarriage, and often women just cannot afford to buy those big, massive green pads. And in fact, I just got a massive donation in this week to the social worker department in Hollis Street, and I've also come on board with the Rotunda now as well to do similar. But yeah, no, again, these, like what I was saying to Ellie earlier, you know, the incontinence pads and the maternity pads are sadly very much forgotten part of this conversation, and they need to be a big part of it.
Those are some really, really interesting points made, and I really want to thank you all for your contributions today and participating as part of this webinar. I think it was really, really worthwhile hearing all your different perspectives. I think everyone on the call, myself included, has learned a lot, you know, and I think it is really good to talk about these things and to understand, you know, how we can change attitudes. And like what you're saying, sometimes it can be just as simple as changing the language. It doesn't have to be a big change. It can be a small tweak here and there, but it can make a massive difference. So I'm conscious we've just run over time there, but of course we can't leave without announcing the winners of the raffle for some lovely mixed products. So the winners were, the names were picked out of a hat early this morning before the webinar started. So they are Laura Tully, Julie Ann Daly-Dorian and Samantha Stackpool. So congratulations to those three, and we will be in touch with each of you regarding getting the prizes to you. So thank you again to all our panelists for contributing today, and thank you to all the attendees. A recording of this webinar will be available on the INMO professional website later on if you want to watch back and to share with any people that you think may be interested in watching it if they couldn't make it live today. Thank you all so much.